Go ahead. Okay, roll call by clerk, please.
Maloney,
Here.
Ermeling is excused. Cronin,
Here.
Feeny,
Here.
Hardinger,
Here.
Wyland,
Here.
Zagami.
Here. Thank you. No flag thing? Not tonight?
I guess
Okay, presentation and discussion. Do we have a flag? No flag. Presentation and discussion of village environmental scan and organizational profile by Village Administrator Keith Donner. Is he here? Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
I'm here. So, guess we should welcome everybody here to their first experience at the new facility, the boardroom. We're still a work in progress. As the staff well knows, I'm kind of very nervous about the whole thing yet because we're in a building that we still have ongoing work. So, I'm probably reacting to it all. So anyway, you can see it's, I guess we certainly have a very nice facility. We're very appreciative of being able to move here. I think everyone has had a telephone conversation, at least with Corey Porras-Plash from RAP Consulting Group. I don't know, you'll be talking later, I guess. I wasn't sure who should go first tonight. She said it really didn't matter. I thought, well, maybe it's better I go first because I have no idea what feedback she received from the focus groups yet or from the community survey. So I felt maybe that would be better for everybody to hear that then after I go through this presentation. So I guess one thing I had given Corey a kind of a outline of my presentation and it was on the wrong track as far as how I was putting it together. So today was kind of a marathon session or a kind of an 11th hour stab at putting this together the way that it's really intended to be, which is putting together some facts and figures, which I think you've been seeing a lot of over the last couple of years anyway. So I guess I'll get started then. The purpose of tonight's meeting is what is referenced as a organizational profile and environmental scan. So I can get to the next slide. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So I'll learn how to do this myself. So this is supposed to be this is a presentation of some data and information about our village. Does that monitor work right now?
Yep. Just real quick question. Is this gonna go over there?
There'll be two over there.
Oh, this is gonna stay?
That stays.
Okay.
I'm seeing you looking around and I'm thinking maybe that's not working.
I feel like everybody's looking at me.
Okay.
Well, those two. Well, then you.
I'll look at this one now.
No, that's all right. if it goes over there, then whatever. Go ahead. That's
So
working fine.
perhaps a lot of this is not going to be news to anybody, but we're trying to review some things that are, I guess, challenges before us, things that we need to be thinking about as we put together a strategic plan. I guess going back to the start here, this is our first meeting together on this whole project, which we began discussing in late summer this year. And I want to, just again, thank Trustee Hardinger for kind of helping us get this off the starting line and get this going. So we're nearing a product, I guess, that will kind of guide us here going forward. So maybe just a little bit about the history of Weston. I think there's people here that have a lot of background on that, but really, I know the town itself or the government related to the town probably dates back to the 1850s. And of course, back then, logging and paper industry and so forth, agriculture were the main activities up in this part of the country. I know that the town of Weston, as far as becoming settled or I guess more suburbanized over time, in the mid-60s was when the first utility service, I think, was furnished. Not sure when public safety services came to be.
1963.
Okay, I'm glad you were here to fill that blank in for me. 1963. And 1996, was the incorporation of the village of Weston. And the things that I understand spurred that or motivated that were annexations of territory from the town into neighboring communities, primarily the village of Rothschild, where the area around the Highway 51 Business 51 interchange was annexed. We have a unique situation where the property that the formerly Foremost Farms and what's now the Cary Biofunctional Ingredients Plant remains owned by the village of Weston. And we have that water tower and well as an island in that part of the country over there. And then the other reason for, other motivation for the incorporation was to get some diversity in the tax base. But the main thing there was to be able to create a tax increment district and use TIF financing to promote some development to get that diversification. So it's now 27 years since the incorporation, 26, something like that. So today we have a population of 15,837 people. That's DOA estimate from 2021. We don't have an update on that for 2022. We are the second largest incorporated municipality in Marathon County. We have 5,461 tax parcels. 4,749 of those have improvements on them. Total of 10,312 acres, which is just over 16 square miles. Total valuation of our land and improvements is $1,164,721,800. This is based on the data from the statement of our assessments for 2022 by our village assessor. That's the valuation without personal property included. So in terms of what comprises that, relative to non-residential so manufacturing makes up about 2.8% of that land area and 6% of that total valuation. Commercial, 33.8% of the land area and 17.3% of the valuation, just for some statistics there. So what business are we in? Of course, we're providing services. General government services, public safety, public works, parks and recreation, planning and development, and utilities. I think we tend to think of these things in silos at times, and really we are interrelated in how we provide our services. There's a lot of it. There's interaction, I guess, when you think about, for instance, public safety. We've had some recent experiences with a mobile home park here locally that kind of points out the need for our building inspection and property inspection services to be working together with our public safety provider, Everest Metro Police Department. In terms of the services, though, of course, some of these are provided by village employees. Others are through contracted services or intergovernmental service providers, Everest Metropolitan Police Department, and SAFER kind of being the most noteworthy. But we have many other intergovernmental agreements or intergovernmental cooperative efforts going on and being discussed. So how we are providing these services, maybe there's no need for me to cover that. I think maybe we all know that. We know what the village staff is providing. Again, there's interrelationship. Our building inspection is considered part of the public safety budget. We have intergovernmental agreements, of course, for our police and fire and EMS services through Everest Metro and SAFER. We have some intergovernmental agreements when it comes to reconstruction of boundary streets. As you know, we bring some of those to you periodically for review. There are some intergovernmental agreements for utility services. We contract for services with our assessor, our attorney. We have aquatic center management services now with the YMCA. And of course, we utilize services of a financial advisor when it comes to some of our long-range planning and borrowing and so forth. Again, some of the other intergovernmental things, we provide extraterritorial zoning services with the town. We also have service agreements with the town and some other neighboring communities. Again, utility service to Rothschild, we are serving something on the range of, I think it's just under 1,000 customers in Rothschild still directly with our utilities. Following the annexations that took place, our utilities remained in our ownership and still do to this day. We have some utility services or facilities that are shared to some level with Rothschild and Schofield. There's an interceptor sewer that runs down Ross Avenue through Schofield, so it carries wastewater from Weston into Schofield, which then ends up at the Wausau wastewater treatment plant. Our Cedar Creek interceptor sewer, which runs down Camp Phillips Road, Shorty Avenue, and eventually over to Business Highway 51. Also picks up wastewater from customers in Rothschild that are served by Rothschild. So there's some interrelationship there. There are some agreements in place that date back into the late 80s and early 90s. And then we have regional wastewater treatment at Rib Mountain Metro Sewerage District on the west side of the Wisconsin River. So I guess kind of noteworthy that if you look at the 1995 incorporation petition, there was noted that the village or the prospective village, the town of Weston, had been making efforts on a lot of intergovernmental cooperation at that time. That was I think it was a positive in terms of the request to be incorporated at that time, because it minimized any case that a neighboring community could say we shouldn't incorporate at that time. So just kind of looking at some of our facilities. When we think of our facilities, I think primarily we think about streets and utilities, but Public Works has done a lot of work, a lot of presentations on this over time. So just in terms of overall facilities, we have 118 miles, give or take, of centerline miles, that is, of roads. Capital equipment within Public Works and is over 50 different pieces of equipment. There's kind of a laundry list there if you care to look at that. 111 miles plus of water mains, just under 103 miles of sanitary sewer, and 71 miles of storm sewer. So just some statistics I guess that you can or can't put in your memory bank, depending on your preference. Parks and recreation, we have quite a number of parks, I guess. What's the total there, Sean? You can tell me what the numbers are.
355. Total acreage.
355 for acres.
How many parks we got? I didn't
It's
tally them.
7 parks.
Seven
plus-
parks.
7 parks plus Roscoe would make 8.
And then we,
The Conservancy is another one.
I'm sorry, what was the other?
The Conservancy. So we have 7
Oh,
traditional,
sure.
7 traditional parks with improvements.
Right.
At this point.
And we don't list the Eau Claire River Trail, and then there are other amenities that are out there. Some private facilities, YMCA, Crane Meadows, Golf Club. These are some things that are also pointed out in our comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. Again, just kind of a background on what we have out there for our facilities. Of course, the aquatic center is a well-known and well-utilized facility by the area population. We guess we're going on to the next one. In terms of valuation of these assets, got a breakdown of, streets, roads, streetlights, things that go into the public right of ways. There's a non-depreciated value that's on our books. That's just over $100 million worth of assets. Depreciated value is indicated to be 42 million. Water utility, water supply and distribution facilities, that's everything, water towers, mains. Again, non-depreciated, $31.8 million valuation, $22 million depreciated. And so forth with wastewater, stormwater. Total is 186 million and depreciated valuation that's indicated in our financial report, 95 million, just over 95 million. So some significant valuation. That certainly doesn't address what it would be to replace those facilities. That is related to the original cost primarily, I believe, right? Right, Jessica?
Yep. That's significant though. I mean, I never looked at it that way, but our assets are old. I mean, if you look at it, there's the depreciated value is 95 million. That means a lot of our roads are over their life and our building is a significant part of that too, the old municipal center.
That's true. And then,
Numbers are as of 2021, so
we'll
it's
be
not included
adding,
the new municipal center yet.
right, so we'll be adding into that any capital additions this year, one of which is gonna be this facility. So that number will obviously change. So I guess, yeah, when you think about that, that's a pretty significant number. Those are pretty significant. So there's a lot of responsibility there to maintain these for the public going forward. Kind of jumping ahead then to our operating budget proposed for this year. This is the kind of the overall kind of high level snapshot of the different aspects of the village government operation. You've probably seen this in the finance committee meetings and the board budget workshops that have taken place here in the last month and a half. In terms of our general government operations, we have just a little over $1.2 million in the budget proposal for this is tax supported operations. This does not include utilities. Public safety, which would be building inspection, Everest Metro, safer. Probably the highest number there, that's 4.3 million. Plus public works then 2.1 million. Culture and recreation, which covers parks and not sure what other categories in there. Jessica could fill in those blanks. And then all other includes contingencies and when we covered that again earlier today, what were the other two things in the
Transfers, contingency, and health and human services, which is their animal control.
all right, so thank you. So you can see then the percentage of the expenditures that those different parts of the operation account for. This is a little more detail on that. Kind of breaks it down a little more in terms of where those expenditures are accounted for. I guess not included, as I said, was utility operations, and just, I guess, for comparison, the water utility operations budget. This is for the expenses that are projected in 2023 as $2.9 million in a round number. Same for the sewer utility operations budget. And then for the stormwater utility, $640,000. So, some significant numbers there as well. Revenues, of course, that's what we need to be able to fund these operations. This also comes out of the 2023 budget preparation. Just kind of pointing out here that the main sources of our revenues are obviously property taxes, a little over $5 million there. We have other taxes, which includes what Jessica calls PILT. I refer to it as pilot, payment in lieu of taxes. That is the property taxes that the water utility pays to the village based on their asset values. There's a formula in our Public Service Commission report that is prepared every year. It has correlation to our tax rate, and it's a tax that every utility and every water utility in the state pays generally to all their municipalities. I don't see how this thing ever goes away, because I don't know what source of revenue there'd be to replace it. But in our case, I know it's over $600,000. There's some other taxes in there, but they're not.
It's over 4, it's like 468
Okay.
is the pilot number. The other big number in there that I forgot to tell you about was the Rothschild payment that we get.
Oh, that's right. So that's a source
And
of,
that's about 90, it's budgeted at 95,000
all right, so that's a source that's gonna be phased out here in a few years. So I've overstated the payment of the taxes done by the water utility. It's a little over 400,000 then. Still a significant number. And then the other major source that's listed there, intergovernmental revenues includes our state shared revenue and general transportation aids. And then we have licenses and permits, a little over $300,000 in our budget. So you can see the numbers there, but also kind of pointing out what some of the main sources are. Going on to the next slide, it just shows you the changes in the revenues that are included or incorporated in the 2023 budget. Again, these come from Jessica's budget preparation documents. She's got some notes here on what comprises these increases in 2023. I don't know if you want to explain those a little bit more, probably better than I can anyway. So if you want to take a shot at just summarizing that, that's fine. Otherwise, I think the notes.
So the two
Do that.
major increases, obviously, property taxes and transportation aids. We took the full increase that we received from our general transportation aids this year, and we put it to the general fund. In the past years, we've kind of split that, some to capital projects and some to general. But in order to balance the budget this year, we put the full transportation aids in the general fund. Permits, we have Inner Springs developing again, so we did increase our permits budget. Other than that, expenditure restraint also went up. In the past, we've split that increase between capital and general, but the full amount isn't general this year. The decreases, we're not achieving our cable franchise fees budgets. We did decrease that by $10,000. And then the inspections for Crownwater, we always budgeted at a conservative $8,000, and that we're planning on going away for next year. Those are the major changes.
Okay, thanks. Just kind of a little bit more background on some of these major categories of our revenues. State shared revenue is this component of our revenue does this come out of the state income tax collections, or where does this come from?
I don't know the source of the funds.
So there's a formula that's applied to divvy out the shared revenue among municipalities. The formula has not favored Weston, and there was actually there's been efforts made to have this whole formula re-examined and be more equitable
The
to.
formula's never been updated, so there was a formula and they never updated it. So the amount from the last year of the formula is the basically the amount that you get from there on out. The other part of shared revenue, so shared revenue is made up of like 3 different areas, and the first 2 are what we get, and it hasn't changed. The other one is the utility. So like, for example, Rothschild gets, part of their shared revenue calculation is their utility payment that they get from the state for the Weston power plants. That is why the amount that we get from Rothschild each year changes. We had it budgeted at $93,000. We've been getting closer to 113. So that part of the shared revenue calculation has changed and been updated. That's why certain communities are getting a benefit yet. But the other 2 portions of the shared revenue calculation have stopped, been updated, so they're no longer updated. And then that's why shared revenue, as you can see, is a fair statement.
Are there communities that are benefiting from it more than, like their numbers are going up instead of down? Or
Only the ones that have the utility as part of the calculation, such as Rothschild. But again, Rothschild's gonna see it when Weston 3, if they're gonna close part of their plants, they're gonna see a decrease. And we won't see a decrease in ours as long as the state doesn't change their allocation to the shared revenue. Answer your question.
yeah,
So part of this though, in the past, when this was examined by it's probably, has to go back more than 10, 15 years, when there was a look at how this formula was applied to say Weston versus some of
You can
these
see when
older
the formula
communities.
stopped, it looked like
Right.
2021, 2023, 2003 maybe. I mean, as the village was growing, your shared revenue was going up, and then it just dropped like a rock.
It's reduced for everybody, I guess, is probably the message, but
that was kind of my question. Is it dropping for everybody? Is there more people pulling from the pot?
So it's
or-
not dropping anymore. In 2000, the Act 10, you can see where it dropped between 2010, 2011. That was the Act 10 when they did go through and cut everybody's shared revenue. The Village of Weston received a bigger hit than a lot of other communities. Just the way the state did their calculation, we really got hit that way. Most municipalities, when they finally got frozen, when the formula got frozen, they were way up here already because they were well established. They had a good population. All the things that involved in the formula, they were already there. So they were flying pretty high. City of Wisconsin Rapids, City of Marshfield, they're well established, doing very well as a city. And the Village of Weston was still growing. And then they stopped. And that's where we got hurt because we were continuing to grow and flourish as a city, and Rapids, Marshfield, they kind of leveled out, and we didn't receive any more benefit.
so the topic is at times floated to our elected representatives to examine or consider making changes to the state shared revenue formula. But that's kind of, it's always been a hot potato and nobody really wants to.
Petrosky came not that long ago, and he spoke to everybody about that. And this
Right.
is the graph that he was trying to talk about, how per capita, he wanted to get that dollar amount up pretty high. And it was way, like almost double than what we had or what we were receiving.
So if you have a chance to interact or I guess contact any elected representatives, it would be a good thing to point out or ask for. I think Representative Snyder or what's the proper,
Pat?
Pat, yeah, but he's the assemblyman, Yeah, he talked briefly about that at the Green Neck Turner ceremonial groundbreaking a few weeks back. Whether or not, this gains any traction, I don't know, but, again, it's something to be brought up with legislators if you have a chance. We certainly would be happy. I think our elected representatives are more apt to listen to feedback or input from elected representatives of the village than there would be from staff. So I know that's one thing that's been mentioned as people talk about some of these topics that may come before the assembly or the state assembly. and Senate. Moving on to the next one, I guess. Another component of our state aids comes through state transportation aids. This is based on a formula. It's either based on your road mileage. Michael, you can probably explain it better. There's a fixed number, like a dollars per mile formula that would be your floor, I suppose. But as you spend money on transportation system improvements, the formula factors in your spending over is it a 7-year timeframe, 6-year timeframe? So when we were growing, I think the biggest year we had was when all the streets were put in around the St. Clair's Hospital, Ministry Healthcare area now. We had a huge year that factored into this formula, and that's where we reached that peak of it's about a little over $1.25 million. And from then on, it was steadily decreasing. There's actually a limitation on how much it can increase or decrease in any one year. What is that percentage based on again?
You can decrease, the minimum is 90% of the previous year.
So we've been on a decline for a number of years as we were pulling back on our capital improvements projects. Since we have now resumed capital improvements plan or capital improvements program and implementing that, you can see we're starting to increase. This year, our increase was $80,000 over last year. As we have continued to move forward on transportation type projects. That also includes our street maintenance. So any spending we do on streets, transportation related projects. In fact, this building, the public works portion of this building will count towards that formula going forward. It's a positive impact. It's not the reason for doing it, obviously, but the spending factors into this formula and how much we get.
And similarly, how they limit how much you can go down, they also limit how much you can come up. So the most we can get is 115% of the previous year. So if you go strictly by the formula, we should have, in 2023, should be receiving $775,000. We are only getting $638,000 though, because of that cap of 115% of what we had. So, but it's nice because it cushions the fall, but it also
Hampers the increase.
hampers the increase, yeah.
But the good news is that it is going
Yeah,
up,
going up.
so it does benefit our operations budget going forward. Thanks, Michael. Next slide, I guess I apologize, I should have made this a little larger, but one thing, one of our limitations and one of the things you are probably hearing about or reading about is, of course, municipalities are hamstrung by state levy limits, and our ability to increase our revenues for general operations are limited by what they refer to as net new construction. And what this table shows, and Jessica and I have talked about this on a number of occasions. Can you expand that, or I guess magnify that somewhat, Nate? Probably best to just focus on the right side if you can on the top there. Can you zoom in any farther? There, that's maybe better. So if you look at that, there's a couple columns under what's titled assessed value. So you have the total assessed value on that left side, then on the right side would be the additional assessed value in the year that's depicted over on the far left column. And that's that percentage then is the amount that the assessed value changed from the prior year to that following year. So that's, in this case, it's 2.16%. Net new construction over on the next column is 2.5, but as you go down those columns, you can see there's really no correlation between the two. So trying to understand or figure out what that's gonna be, and I know Jessica now says that she has kind of figured this out, how this works, but really, if you look at the these lines below now, if you scroll down, Mike, or Nate, I guess what I wanted to show here is we get questioned or lobbied, if you will, by developers that, okay, I'm gonna put in development and I'm gonna create all this new tax base for you. And if we were to look, say, let's just look at the Hinnard Springs development, for instance.
Keith, can I just stop you for a minute?
Sure.
Is this whole packet you?
Yeah.
You're gonna do this? Okay. I don't know. I have no attention span. Everybody here knows it, okay? I'm having a hard time correlating this to and this sounds really rude. I know it does. But strategic planning session. I just feel like we're going through numbers and financial stuff. And how is that gonna dovetail into what we, I guess what I thought we were gonna come here for? I mean, what did the committee say? What did, our conversations, interviews do? I just help me out.
So that's what Corey will cover.
Yeah, but
I think-
11 pages of this, so we're gonna actually talk about strategic priorities and all this stuff before we get into her. So you're gonna present all this.
First, this is first our view of what things are.
Okay.
You're gonna hear.
And you had,
And then,
so this discussion was with you, Corey?
I'm sorry?
So were you expecting all this from staff like this or what?
So generally the,
I mean, who has the agenda together?
Yeah,
Am I like the only one feeling this?
I'm on the same page.
I'm
not
lost.
quite-
I'm
Yeah.
just lost.
I'm
I thought I was coming here for
speaking, But
all kinds of strategic
know
stuff
about
and
it
comments and public opinion. So help me out with, I kind of thought, okay, this must be ending at about 18. And then we're gonna get off into, some of the other stuff. So, and shame on me because a lot of these trustees have not been here a while and I've heard all this. So
Okay,
I guess I don't understand
okay,
where we're going. Yeah, we incorporated, we know all that stuff. So how does that gonna help us now? It's very rude, very open, very public. I can't help it.
okay, I apologize if I'm
So,
back too far.
because at this rate right now, it's 6:45. And we're halfway through this, so we're gonna be at 7:30, 7:45, and then we're gonna start. I don't know how long your presentation is. I don't want you to leave here tonight thinking, Jesus, who in the hell is that guy?
if
But
I,
I honestly feel, I'm
I
not the
think
only
this will
one here.
go, I think this will go faster once we get through some of this financial stuff. I just wanted to make this point, I guess. If I can't, if I'm not able to make it, then I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Background and history.
background and history. How many times do we have to go over background and history? I don't know. Do we really?
So Corey's mission tonight would be to present the findings or the results of the focus groups and the survey. My presentation was also intended to give you our perspective, my perspective on what things we should be trying to focus on as priorities, but that is to be yet determined in a future session that we have. In fact, that'd be the session we would have on the 29th, that we'd start zeroing in on what your thoughts are on all those things.
Well, I guess it's not even mine, and I guess it's dovetailing staff in here, but staff is always gonna have priorities. It's always gonna have goals to get somewhere, and an inbound trustees or outbound, they're gonna have the same thing. I guess my thought was, what is the public saying? I don't know what kind of interaction we got. I'd love to hear, some of the pain points from the public and some of these other factions, you know. And then this whole thing has to survive elections. It's gotta be kind of a broad paintbrush. Because it can all get changed by a different makeup up here, you know, or staff changing. So, I'm done. I will be quiet now.
Okay, so at some point, we need to have a map, we need to have a direction on where we're going, so
And if we're supposed to have no direction, that's
we
fine
need,
too.
but we need your input on that, that's the whole point of this thing. So I can move on, we can move on to what, I mean, ultimately, I guess maybe the message ultimately is financial constraints affect what we can or can't do.
But what can we do with that? I mean, so we're gonna call a few of our representatives, whoop-de-doo. You know, they've got their own goals and own things happening on the state level. We have to work within these restraints. And if they get worse, then we gotta work within those restraints. You know, I mean, cost of food is going up. What I do for a living, I gotta work within those restraints, you know? Lettuce used to be $24 a case, it's $135 a case. You know, so it is what it is. We gotta move forward, you know, and I gotta keep selling lettuce. So to me, it doesn't matter what's happening with this money. We gotta find solutions to move forward.
I think that getting everyone on a common page before diving into responses, is valuable so that way everyone has had the same information. But I understand where you're coming from. This isn't quite the way I expected it either.
I'm not trying to push this. I could care less about the Packers. I'm not watching the Packers. I could give a crap about them. They're all $100 million, you know, people. I'll stay here as long as it takes. I just, you know.
Okay, so,
I gotta get my attention happening. So,
all right, I'm
sorry.
I apologize for.
No apologies, no. Love is never having to say you're sorry. So, okay?
It's a lot of
All
really.
right, so the point, I'm sorry.
Keith, I appreciate you putting it together. I think a lot of us were really looking for Corey's findings. This is kind of what we're, and this is all valuable things that we can tie into that, but I think one of the reasons she's here is really to present what she's.
Sure.
Absolutely. I mean, I fully intend to read this. I've been reading ahead, so it's good information.
Oh, it's great.
Well, I'd like to have it
So-
able to read.
If I could just say, the main point of this slide is that the impact of development is not what people may think it is. It's probably about half of what they think it is, based on how these formulas shake out. So, and I guess, that pretty much summarizes what the point of that slide, or that information in that table was meant to show.
Okay.
So, would you like me to conclude and then
I wanna run this.
turn it over to Corey?
I'm really hard to be quiet.
That's what we can do.
How does everyone think? You know, I mean, hopefully, so you talk to us, and I don't care if you use my name with whoever heard my comments, but it's supposed to be, you know, anonymous, right? Right? So, and staff, same thing. We need to have like passionate, you know, issues with either elected officials or we're not going the right way, whatever. I mean, that's gonna all come together. Okay.
So if I can give my two, I personally, looking at this, I think all I'm seeing here is staff's plan for how this is gonna go. And the point of the meeting tonight was to get an idea from the focus groups and from what the trustees have said on how this is.
And staff.
And staff.
Yep.
So, I mean, I personally would like to hear what Corey has to say, but that's just me. And I don't mean any offense to you at all, Keith, when I say that, so.
No, I guess,
Well, I kind of feel like I've been hearing staff. I've been hearing what staff feels we should be doing. You know, I think our point, I mean, Jasper, you brought it up that, and you've been talking about this for years, that we need you know, we've had I remember other administrators having, you know, planning sessions and stuff like that. And I guess I've been at 3 or 4 of those, you know, with you know who. And I don't remember starting this way. So I remember it was, you know, kind of loud sometimes and, you know, a lot of different individuals at the table. But I just don't remember doing this, so. Anyway.
okay, well, I guess I will suffice it to say then that there are slides that include some of the issues that I know we're dealing with, you've heard about. Our again, our finances affect our ability to provide services. There's ideas of what our citizens want for service, there's ideas of what you feel we should provide for services. There's a reality of what we can provide. So this whole exercise is supposed to get us, I think, working in the same direction. So we're not at odds with each other, especially staff and the board in the end. So I don't know what more than to say tonight. If you want to turn it over to Corey, I'm perfectly.
Well, I know, but if there's staff comments or staff direction or staff opinion that's gonna get missed, I mean, we need to dovetail it in as we're talking with her and as the board is talking. You know, we gotta be able to gain all this. I don't want this to all be put together and then I stifle it, either.
So how would,
This all has to get represented. Everybody has to have a voice here.
It's all gotta be fluid. I mean, if
These
Corey's
are-
talking about something, there's no reason that we can't bring something up that's further on this packet.
there are things that could be brought to this next session on the 29th as well. I don't know, I guess I can turn that over to Corey. She's done these more than, she lives this, so
Yeah.
she can probably help direct this.
So we
much
know,
better than me.
we know what we have in staff, okay? So, good, excellent group. And so their comments, and then we have the elected officials, some might have said more, some might have said less. Would you say that it's and then you have the third, is there a third or is there a fourth? Probably a third of the public, business, whatever, right? I mean, am I envisioning these focus groups of others other than us, right?
Yeah, and I can,
So with that other group, the other percentage, would it be a third, and a third? So would it be kind of equal or no?
no, so if I may, so.
Kind of give me the feeling of what the public is.
Sure, if I could just provide a little context maybe to start and then kind of jump in.
Sure.
The point of an organizational profile and environmental scan is just to kind of have everybody kind of pull together, because we're gonna be looking at a whole lot of stuff over the next few weeks, right? Part of what we have to understand is things like the financial situation, because obviously that's going to then, it may dictate some of the choices that are made. There's going to be, if infrastructure, for example, is an issue, just knowing that from the staff's point of view. So that's kind of the point of the environmental scan and the organizational profile. I can go ahead and start jumping real quick into some of the stuff with the stakeholder results. There is going to be, as mentioned, so just about everybody has done the SWOT analysis. We are going to be using that as we go through on the 29th. And that's going to be information from both staff and our elected board. So we're going to have an opportunity to really kind of see some of that information from a couple of different sides. So let me go ahead and kind of jump in here real quick, and we'll go ahead and go from here. So Nate, if you could go ahead and advance the slide for me. So a little bit about me. I've talked to most everybody, I think. I've got almost 10 years in local government, 6 of them as a 911 dispatcher. I spent 4 years at a mission-driven tech startup, which actually does survey research, which is the reason why I'm going to talk to you about surveys today. I will be able to provide some context. Please, if you've got any questions, please ask me. I'm more than happy to answer them based on my experience, both with them and then also dealing with, communities around the country who are doing strategic things. I've worked for the Alliance for Innovation, a couple of places, and I also present nationally on innovation using data and stakeholder engagement. Next slide, please. So let's jump into real quick to the community survey results. Next slide. So who did we talk to? So if we want to go ahead and get here, so when we talk about surveys, really what I had hoped for to get out of this was between 350 and 400 surveys. And we nailed it almost exactly.
374.
374.
Staff.
That is correct. That is correct. That is community survey responses, which if you are looking at doing a statistically valid survey, you're really looking for about 400. So really we're right in there. And we are talking about a population of 15,000. I'm very pleased with this.
Was that the thingamajig where you take the picture and?
The QR code.
That thing?
QR code, yes.
So that's 374 QR codes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Out of those, almost 90% of them identify themselves as residents. About 5% identified themselves as business owners, and then property owners was a little more than half. Living situation, most of the people that we talked to were homeowners. There was a number of renters. Next slide, please. So we're looking at age, and actually, I should say, that is actually pretty common. We tend to hear more from homeowners than we do from renters simply because they're more invested in the community. So that is very typical when we're looking at survey results. Looking at this, again, this is very typical, again, kind of the same reasons. People who are homeowners who have been in the community for a while, they tend to be the ones who are most interested in answering surveys of this type. I will point out, though, I'm very pleased to see particularly the under 18 and 18 to 24. Those are some really hard demographics to get any sort of information from. So what this tells me is there was some really robust outreach in order to be able to get this. This is pretty comparative to what I see in terms of a distribution. We tend to get a lot more in kind of that 45 to 64, and then, you know, a curve. But anyway, this is very typical. Next slide. So race, ethnicity, again, very typical, hard to reach populations generally, people who are of color, who are from immigrant populations, English as a second language, tend to respond to these things less, but we still got 92%. And again, other than that, we have people who identified themselves as other than white or Caucasian. Very pleased by that as well. Shows me that there was some good outreach. In terms of gender, women always just tend to answer surveys a little bit more than men. Not really sure why, but you guys are right there with everybody else. More women answered it, but not by a lot.
That's pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah, very close, actually. In terms of some of just the general questions we asked, a little more than 10% identified a member of their household as having a disability, and almost 30% said that somebody in their household was age 65 or older. And again, probably pretty typical responses. Next slide, please. 17 and or young under in your household. So about 35% of our respondents come from families where they've got children under 17 in the house. Next slide. So now we start getting into the good stuff. What do you like best about living in Weston? And what I've done with these is I've gone through and I've picked out just some of the top things to go ahead and take a look at. So with this one, what people like about living in Weston, they could select up to 3. Location. Location came up with 50% of them saying that was one of their top 3. Feeling safe, very, very consistent with what we see. People like living places where it's safe, obviously. Peaceful community, schools came in very high. A lot of people who responded grew up here, have family in the community. And then the fact that it's a clean community also came in as one of the 3. Next slide.
Just real quick.
Yeah, please back up.
So your house survey, why are we growing? Why are we going to do more than half of all the growth in the next 25 years here? What does that say? I guess I don't remember what their answer was. Why are people choosing here? You know what I mean?
A lot of it is because of that.
So it's kind of the same, it's all the same?
School
Okay.
district, we've got the land.
Yep.
You're
The growth
putting in the
potential,
apartments
okay.
for the ones that have.
So that's what it said in a lot of those surveys, because we've had 2 of them done now, right? Or 3, right? You just had one the other night, right? Wasn't that a housing study or something?
Yeah, that's the housing assessment,
Okay.
yeah, for the area. That's the metro area.
Okay.
So these were the top 6 out of how many options?
I want to say there was 12, 13, 14. I can get the number for sure.
Yeah, I mean, didn't you take it?
I'll be honest, I've faced it. I know.
Oh, we would have had
I told-
375.
I told you that on the phone.
I'm out, I'm leaving.
Yeah,
My phone kept crashing.
So to Nate's point, he had an issue, Keith, he brought up no smartphone. How did those people get handled?
So I did actually manually enter 15 surveys that were forwarded to me.
Okay, and then another one is, okay, so I'm gonna be a stinker and I'm gonna do it twice. What's to prevent me doing it twice?
So the reason why they were forwarded to me is because you can't take it from the same computer more than once unless
Or
you're
phone.
computer savvy enough to
Okay.
work around it.
But I could take it from my wife's phone.
You can, but then you can take it twice, unless your wife has multiple phones.
So then is there a margin of error in something like this?
So this is.
And I don't mean error, but I mean like
Yeah.
mistrust. I mean,
Yeah, no.
I filled out wrong.
I'm happy to, I will talk surveys all day long with you.
Okay.
So there are 2 ways to conduct a survey. One is a statistically valid survey, and that's where you go through and maybe you'll pull addresses from utility bills. You'll do something like that. So you have a sample and then you see how many of those people respond. That is not what we did here.
Okay.
This is an opt-in survey. So we're talking about an opt-in survey. Some of the things that are really important to see are, again, some of the things I pointed out in the beginning. How many women versus how many men? What were the ages? How do they identify themselves? That tells me how far we got into the community. And so what I'm seeing from this is there was definitely a robust outreach, and we definitely did penetrate the community well. To get those young people to respond, I don't see that.
Okay.
So I am very pleased. This is not, I can't tell you with 95% confidence that this is the way that all of your residents feel, because that's not the way we collected the data.
Okay.
But I can tell you for an opt-in survey, in my opinion, this was a very robust effort that we have got some very nice.
One more question, Nate or Keith. When you guys did that questionnaire, that kind of fun one, when we were getting bounced around on DC Everest Boulevard, remember when we thought it was the right thing to do and then we got hammered by the business owners? So we did that kind of quick, fun little survey. What was it? That was a huge response. What was that number? Was it over 100 or over 300?
It was like 300.
Okay, it was that big. Okay, because I was pretty impressed with that. I mean, that many people took the time to fill it out, and there was a little competition. Okay, I'm done.
That's all good. I like that. And I'm happy to explain the data to you because it's important for everybody to understand it. So that's why I'm here. Next slide. So then we started asking questions about things like how important these things are to their quality of life. So again, I'm gonna go kind of from the bottom up, public safety. And again, that's very consistent with what we see. Feeling safe, again, very consistent with what we see. If people who have high degrees of satisfaction where they live, a lot of times they feel
I
safe.
saw that asked several different ways, and I thought, okay, they're trying to get to a point.
Yep, that's the reason why.
And other things too, schools.
Yep, no, that's part of it, is that we are kind of trying to get information in a couple of different ways.
Yep.
Affordability, cost of living, obviously that is important as well. If you can't live here, then don't look at this as a great place to live. Schools are always an important thing. Even for people who don't have children, they look at it as tied to their home values. So again, this is very consistent with what I see. This is all the responses that were over 40%. They're just the ones that are very important. Next slide, please. This is a little bit bigger because what I did is that I took all of the more positive responses. So I combined the somewhat important and the very important, because sometimes it gives you a little bit different information. So when we go ahead and we look at it that way, public safety, feeling safe, again, very high. Affordability, the bottom 5 are all kind of the same, but what changed a little bit, local stores and shopping was one of the things that was really important to quality of life, as was housing type and quality. Those were two things that were very important that kind of rose to the surface a little bit more once we started parsing the data in this way. Next slide, please.
Could we pick as many as we wanted out of that? I can't remember. Could all of
It was actually a multiple choice grid, and so for every single response, it was either very important, somewhat important, neither, important, somewhat. I don't remember exactly what the scale was, but it was every one though you got to choose. How satisfied are you with the following services? Public safety, very, very high. Quality of life, very high. Neighborhood appearance, fire and emergency medical response, school system, all 70% or above. Next slide, please. So with this, what I did is that I actually am looking at the places where they said they were less satisfied. So what I did here is everything that was more than 15% of the people said they were either somewhat or very dissatisfied. This may give us an opportunity to look at some places maybe for some priorities. So with that, recreational program offerings, multiple transportation options, and that specifically will come up more in my focus group report, which I'll get to in a minute. Arts and cultural opportunities. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little surprised by drinking water because that did not come up as much in the focus groups, but it did come up here. And then roads also did come up during the focus groups as well.
And you think this is, I mean, I can see drinking water and roads specifically at Weston, but like arts and cultural opportunities, do you think that when they answered that, they meant Weston or
Yes.
the whole area?
So the question is in the village of Weston.
Okay, yep, all right. Wow.
So any other, all right, we'll keep on going then. And please do stop me as I'm more than happy. That's why I'm here, is to answer questions. So
those are kind of like the 18% on the path, right? That's kind of a negative,
yeah, it is.
but yet it's a huge positive. I hear about it all the time, that are
They
the
just
trails
want
and,
more, though.
yeah, oh, they want
They want
more, right,
Okay.
okay.
I will get it, and we'll get it.
Has staff seen this yet? No, this is all new?
No, this is all new.
Okay.
And I will say, so let me talk a little bit about the reason why we've got data in two different ways. This is kind of telling you the numbers, but it's not telling you the why behind the numbers.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you some of the numbers first, and then the focus groups a lot of time kind of told you the why.
Okay.
And that's the reason why we get the data in two different ways. So how important these things are for the Village of Weston: housing affordability, well-maintained community, again, schools, all very common, a good place to raise a family, affordable village services, and a safe community. This is pretty consistent with what I see. I don't see any huge outliers here from what I normally see in communities. Next slide. And now again, we want to kind of look at the other one. This is, did we go forward or backward?
Oh, sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Next one.
There we go.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. How important are these things to your quality of life? Again, these are all things that I find very typical when we're looking at different communities. I'm just gonna make so I know where I'm going next. Okay, next slide, please. I think we may be going backwards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think the fire response.
No, that's okay.
That just, one before, right there, that one I have not seen, right?
Yeah, that was up there before.
Oh, it was, okay. All right.
Yeah, I think that we should be around,
We didn't see those.
yeah, so 14
I think it's-
is where I think the last one we need to do 14, please.
They should have a page number.
No, that's okay. I appreciate the fact you're driving, so we're all good. So, and again, these are things that I would say are very typical. Next slide, please. That's okay.
Determined not to get
There you go.
slide.
Well, it got down, there it is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah.
So, things that are important to the future of Weston. A good variety of recreational activities, good traffic flow. And that, again, we've got some data from the focus groups to get into that a little bit. Housing affordability, well-maintained community, good place to raise a family, affordable village services, and a safe community. Again, we'll get into some more of this in the focus group report, but I am not at all surprised based on the focus groups that these are kind of rising to the top. Next slide. So please indicate the extent to which you agree or disagree with the following statement. So we're just going to start out with just the ones that we agree with, and this is more than 60%. So Village of Weston should be a leader in environmental sustainability. Not going to lie, that surprised me a little bit. Village of Weston.
Higher or lower?
You know what, it's a little, I don't normally find that, I'll be honest, as much in Wisconsin. I see that much more in, like, for example, Minneapolis.
It's higher.
That it is higher there, yet this is a little bit higher than what I have seen
Okay,
in
all
Wisconsin.
right, so it's actually higher than you thought it would be.
Than I thought it would be, yes, yep. Village has got a good reputation, should invest in creating jobs and grow local business. Again, we'll get into that in a minute in the focus group report. Good place to live, providing a healthy and safe environment. Again, very typical. The village should invest in programs and projects that enhance the quality of life for all community members. That was very high, which I thought was very interesting. And then high quality school system, again, that is pretty typical. That schools are very much tied to housing values and to families wanting to move and live here. Next slide, please. And now I did the same thing again when I looked at the extent to which they strongly or somewhat or strongly disagreed. Village of Weston has a good reputation. Now you'll remember we actually have seen that on both sides. So there's a little bit of a split there. There's a lot of people who apparently do think that Weston has a good reputation, but there's a little bit too on the other side as well, and I wanted to bring that out. Village of Weston should prioritize an equitable and inclusive community. That was something that was disagreed with. Village has done a good job updating its infrastructure. 25% either somewhat or strongly disagreed with that. Village of Weston is effective at communicating with residents, almost 29%. Strongly or somewhat disagreed with that. And again, we'll get into that in a little bit in the focus groups. And then Village of Weston is fiscally responsible with its resources. 35% strongly or somewhat disagreed with that. And again, I think we've got some focus group data that is probably not going to come as any surprise, but may give a little bit of enlightenment to some of the numbers. Next slide, please.
Was that typical of what you normally see? Or is that one a little?
That's not quite simple. Could you go back to that for just a second?
Mm-hmm.
I would say, so let's kind of back out of this for a little bit. There has been traditionally some distrust, particularly of state and federal government.
Mm-hmm.
That for the first time is now coming out of the local level. So that is really going through and changing a lot of the information that we are seeing versus what we have seen previously.
But not just now. I mean, we've been talking about local level for years, right? I
So
mean, staff has seen it increasing, right?
The figures show that traditionally people, the closer they were to the resident, the more they trusted them. So they trusted the local more than the state and the state more than the feds. But generally, local government has had high degrees of trust.
Okay.
That has changed in the last 5 years. And I don't know specifically every single, municipality, but nationally, that's a trend. So in terms of this particular one, communication, that can come up fairly often. It's sometimes it's hard. People don't necessarily want to go for information. They kind of want it to appear and making it apparent can be a challenge. Fiscally responsible, that comes up sometimes. Those numbers are a little higher than what I quite honestly had expected. Infrastructure is a little higher than I had expected.
Well, I think that the bottom two are pretty well correlated to this.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And we're going to talk about that during my focus group report. Yep, like I said, I don't think a lot of this stuff is going to come as a surprise. But we've now got a couple different data sources for this. Next slide, please. This was actually very interesting to me in that the way that people want to get their information, very low in terms of things like text messages, electronic newspapers and social media, very high on hard copy, postcard, letters, stuff like that. That's a little bit unusual. And I'm not really sure why that actually did not come up in the focus group, but this is just some information on how to best get information out, what they look. They're really kind of looking for some of those hardcore, things like postcards and mailings, and then also on the website.
Is that more representative of the kind of age demographic that answers to, or do you normally not see that even with the same age distribution?
So surprisingly enough, the social media, Facebook, that's not a young person's game. So that is actually tends to normally be pretty high. This community is not as interested in getting information from social media.
But we do social media a lot. We definitely push that, I think, with our stuff.
And there is still almost 40% who are saying that is the way that they want to get information, and people could choose multiple ways. But I normally do see that particularly Facebook with that, 45 to 60-ish population tends to be a little bit higher.
Well,
So any questions? Because this is actually kind of the end of my information from the community survey.
okay.
All right, we're gonna keep on going then. If you could advance, please. So you can go next. All right, focus groups. Here we go. This was a lot of fun. Next slide, please. So I came in, we did 3 focus groups on October 6th and 7th, and then we did an additional virtual focus group on the 20th. Participants self-selected based on outreach from the village. They signed up in advance. Next slide, please. So what is a focus group process? Small group discussion guided by a trained facilitator. You get in-depth information that way. What we talked about mostly was strengths and challenges. Meetings ran for roughly 60 to 90 minutes. What I tell everybody with the focus groups is that it is Vegas rules apply. That what happens there stays there. It's our opportunity to be very candid in our responses and know that it will remain anonymous.
I thought I heard you say Vegas, but you actually did.
I did say Vegas rules apply. You did not mishear me.
What kind of numbers at these focus groups?
You know what? I don't recall the number that we had.
30, 15?
Oh yeah, it was definitely 30 to 40.
Okay, so no elected officials were there, right?
No.
And
no staff.
No, okay. All right.
No, and that
Where was it
is,
held? Where were they held?
so they were over at the old village hall.
Okay.
Boardroom.
Yeah.
Huh?
And that is on purpose because you don't want anybody, sometimes if people
I
say
agree.
somebody from the city, they want to say nice things because they, and so we wanted to make sure that they felt very free to just share what they
No
thought.
commission members?
There was a plan commission member.
Jim Penisall wanted to be on.
He was on
He
one.
was there.
I don't remember who else.
But you weren't there, right?
I only introduced at the
Oh.
beginning of
Yes.
some of them and just said, thank you
And
for
just-
participating.
Yeah.
I'm
And actually,
leaving,
and
I don't know.
I did ask Keith to introduce because
That's fine.
when you give permission
Yeah.
to be candid, then people feel like it's okay.
Okay.
And so I do normally ask the administrator to go ahead and to welcome everybody, thank them for their time and start focus groups.
I think there was a safer commission member, or not a safer, EMPD commission member that participated.
Okay.
Yeah, that may very well be, it didn't come up in the conversation that they were a commissioner.
But a Weston resident.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions about who participated or process? All right, let's go
I say it
ahead.
all the time. I'm done. He says I said I'm done 12 times.
Keep on going, if you can take me to the next slide. So I asked 8 questions, identical questions, every single focus group. And I will go ahead, I will put this into a PDF and I will mail this out to you so you guys have got it later. So if you don't have a chance to, absorb all of it now, you will have a chance to review it later.
So these 8 questions resulted in the 60 to 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So you do one and then let it just go.
So what I do is I'll go ahead and I'll, what do you like, when you think about what you like best about the village, what comes to mind?
Oh.
And then sometimes I need to clarify a question. Sometimes there's actually interaction between focus group members, which is it's a lot of fun because focus groups are great because sometimes residents learn from each other. They get different perspectives from people who also care about the community. And so there's a lot of dialogue sometimes, which is part of the reason why it goes 60 to 90 minutes. So these are the.
Lauren, you have something?
Oh,
sorry.
Village of Weston resident.
Yep.
I have a question. Did this focus group get an opportunity or had they seen the results of the survey or was it just
Nope.
cold?
They
These
were
are the
completely
questions.
separate processes.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing they do with focus groups is I tell everybody they don't have to answer any question except for the last one. And I require everybody to answer the last question.
Aloud, what do you mean, or what do you mean?
Yeah, because sometimes people just don't have anything to contribute or they may be quieter or whatever. And so sometimes people don't, choose not to say anything. But the last question I ask everybody to do, and the reason why is because over the course of the focus group, we are going to talk about a whole bunch of different things. And the very last thing I do is I ask them to bring it down to 3. And so we will see that at the end of the presentation as well.
And they could repeat what others had said.
Sure, yes, they can. And you'll see I actually tallied them.
Okay.
So you'll see when we get there.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So some of the major themes that came out, I will go through all of these: location, schools, public safety, village services, village amenities, infrastructure, transportation, leadership, communication, transparency, growth residential, and growth business. There was a lot of conversation about growth. Normally I don't have to break that up. In this case, I did. Next slide, please. So location, everybody loves living here. They love the fact that it's near the North Woods. You've got access to things like Milwaukee. It was near everything without the big city problems. I heard from a couple of different people. There's independent businesses. People really appreciate things like the mom and pop restaurants. There's a commercial airport that's closed. And my very favorite comment out of that was it was a nice mix of civilization and no civilization, which I think summed it up very well. Next slide. Schools are a source of pride. A couple of the groups talked about how they support referendums. It's important to keep up the community, the facilities, because they really want to make sure that we provide the best for the kids. There are some questions in another focus group, but too much in taxes. Maybe do we need so many of these? But one of the things that came up in one group in particular was they specifically talked about the fact that the trades department really was updated as a result of the last referendum. And they felt that that really was a good addition to the community, got kids off to a good start. Next slide. Public safety. Weston is safe with no crime, homeless, or drug problems. I don't know if it's none, but that's a great perception to have.
They just don't know.
That's okay. One of the things that came up is that they really felt safe. They knew, especially during COVID and the riots that were happening nationally, they really felt like Weston was kind of disconnected from that, and they were very happy about that. Fire department's great. Full-time ambulance is important for the community. Police are seen as responsive. There are some concerns about response times as the community grows. Speeding and truck traffic, especially in residential areas and near schools, are growing concerns. I'm going to get a little bit deeper into that a little bit further on, but that did come up a lot. And another question was if Weston is prepared for a cyber attack. Next slide.
That's an unusual question. Names, bro, right?
Actually, and you know what, not as much anymore. I would have said 2 years ago it would have been. I think that there have been some pretty high profile things recently, especially with water, drinking water. I think it's just a lot more on everybody's radar. So village services, code enforcement was a really interesting conversation. Some people were like, yes, we love code enforcement is great. And other people are like, how much code enforcement do you really need? So there really was some difference in opinion, which is not unusual. Especially things like junk cars and trash, really the residential areas, having those cleaned up and having those codes enforced was very important. Snow plowing kind of got some mixed results from that, but basically it was good, it was adequate, but it could be improved. Park services are fantastic. I heard that a couple different places. Parks need updating was one of the things that I did hear, and especially the dog park. And one of the things that people really appreciate is yard waste day. That was popular, and they would like paper shredding, however, which I'm not gonna lie, if you guys start doing paper shredding, I might drive, because we can't get enough of that. Next slide. Village amenities, one of the things that did come up was, are there enough things for young people to do? One of kind of the themes that went through the focus groups were that people grow up in Weston and then they leave and we want them to come back. And so one of the things that they were talking about is even when those young people are still here, how can we keep them here? How can we make it a vibrant community that even if they do go to college, they come back, but hopefully they'll even just stay here for that time. One of the suggestions was to get input from young people themselves and not their parents. That was seen as a gap maybe in the past.
What would you determine to be young people, 14 to 20?
14 to 20.
Okay.
Yep. New amenities such as an indoor water park or baseball fields for tournaments. If we're going to dream, we might as well dream big. And those were a couple of the dreams out there. Parks and trails to accommodate both walking and biking. No surprise to anybody here, I'm sure, but you guys have got a population that really enjoys being outside, and they want to make sure that the trails are able to accommodate a couple of different types of modal transportation. A kayak launch pad with a concrete slab. Apparently there's pavers now, but might get more use that way. And then playground equipment, there was some discussion that it needs to be good quality when it's initially put in, but then maintenance is an ongoing issue. Next slide, please. Infrastructure, walking trails overall, very high marks from people. The Eau Claire River Trail needs more maintenance. Again, that came up with a few different people. There was, however, a lot of appreciation the trails are plowed in winter. It really does allow people to be able to get out, and I understand that's relatively new. Clean, safe drinking water is a priority. Again, I think no big surprise there. There was a cyber attack on a water facility in Florida. I don't know if that's kind of what is on people's mind, but ever since that, I'm hearing more about drinking water. People are just a lot more aware, and Weston very much consistent with that. There were some suggestions that internet starts being looked at as infrastructure, that it really is not anything anymore where you can really get by without internet.
You mean available village-wide or supplied village-wide?
So apparently there is one internet provider and sometimes the service isn't great, and they really wanted, because of, I don't always get the information I'm given is not always right.
Yeah.
Spectrum and
Well,
yes.
Depends on people like Shorey and Woodland, because they're
Not
stuck with,
everybody has
Frontier, if you want.
I heard Frontier specifically.
Yeah.
Terrible, it's terrible.
That did come up as something because they really do want that elevated because they feel like there are some issues with the internet service, and it is needed for so much now.
So available or supplied? How did you take it? I mean.
I think that if it can be, I don't think that they cared as long as it was reliable.
Reliable.
However it came, as long as it was reliable.
Yep.
That was what really the issue was. And then landscaping on medians came up as something was not well maintained. I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Were they concerned about the cost of it, price of it?
Cost did not come up as part of the conversation. It was really about reliability.
It's kind of amazing, you know, I've got 4 kids and it seems like they just move wherever they want to move, whenever they want to move. And then, they realize I can't get internet here.
Yes.
And it's just like, you live on your internet. How could you not know that it's not here, you know?
Yes.
But then COVID did a lot with us. I mean, a lot of people were home, Green Heck, when those couple people came in and said, like you said, Shorey, you know, here they are at home and they can stay home, but if they don't get internet, they have to go back to work.
Yeah. I worked from home for 5 years. I woke up one morning, my husband started working from home, my son came home from college, my 2 daughters came home from high school, and all of a sudden, my very quiet house that I normally work at was a very different place. And I think you're probably right. I think COVID really probably did make that much more apparent. And we didn't specifically get into this, but things I've heard in other places is that it did stress the internet services more because they weren't expecting that kind of capacity.
Okay.
And then landscaping on medians is not maintained as well. That was actually a little bit of a conversation. Apparently it goes in later and is not maintained as well over the course of the year. And they really, part of the conversation was that the medians, when people are entering into town, you want them to have the best impression. And they weren't sure that the landscaping on the medians was giving the impression that they wanted people to have of Weston.
That's amazes me, because I see it. I mean, and I talk about it, but I think I'm different. I think I'm weird that I see the weeds, because, when you see a train car, it's all graffiti and it's normal. It shouldn't be normal, but it is normal. And I wonder sometimes if people do see some of the things I see, and I'm definitely different, but.
That came up in a couple of different groups.
Really?
Yeah, that did come up in a couple, and it wasn't, up at the top.
Yeah.
But it was, they're proud of where they live and they want to have it look good, especially people who are coming in for the first time. Next slide. Roads and transportation, we're going to be spending a little bit of time here, guys, just so you know. More sidewalks and walking trails next to roads are needed. That came up repeatedly as a safety concern. That they really feel like, especially with some additional traffic flow, that is now not as safe for people who are walking, trying to bike, whatever. There was a lot of questions about how traffic was going to be handled near this new facility to make sure it was safe. Designated truck routes.
Assuming that there'll be more traffic coming in here, like our.
Well, because apparently there's also a school here, or a couple of
Okay.
schools here as well,
Yep.
and that was a concern as well.
Okay.
And I will say, just part of what I do with focus groups, I don't know anything about the communities when I come in, which is actually kind of good because I don't have any bias. And so I just kind of gather all the information. So I don't always have some of the information as a result. So designated truck routes, that came up quite a bit. Apparently there's trucks who are cutting through residential neighborhoods. And that is becoming a real concern to residents because of safety. Lack of public transportation came up as an increasing issue for older adults because it really impacts their ability. Apparently there was a service that wasn't well funded and nobody was really, I got some different answers as to whether it was still in existence or not, but some sort of transit, particularly for older people, was something that was discussed.
You want to answer, then
I'm sorry,
someone
Mark.
needs to answer.
I'm sorry.
Lauren White, Village of Weston resident. I was around when the busing issue was done by referendum, mandatory. We financed it. The business community also chipped in a big chunk of money. And over the years that it was here and available, I kept a close eye on how many people were on that bus. On average, I was happy if I ever saw 3 people on a bus.
So one of the things that came up as one of the things that they wanted to have stops that were near enough to people's homes that it was accessible. And I don't know if that was an issue or not, but
It was it only covered 14% of the village geographically.
yeah.
Limited hours, limited days. And it was self-defeating.
Okay.
And it was very expensive.
Okay. Anyways, in the for what it's worth category, that was something that was identified as a need. Also that they want Weston to become more bike friendly. That was something that came through as well. 2 roads specifically needing better pedestrian walkways, Camp Phillips and Grand Avenue.
Busy.
Road conditions just overall, they were hoping would be improved. And then roads with truck traffic, because again, there's some issues with trucks going through residential neighborhoods and some other things. They want the truck routes and they want the roads with truck traffic to be curbed, guttered, and constructed to handle the weight. There's concerns about road conditions and those heavy trucks and what it's doing. And then again, truck traffic should be steered away from residential areas. Any questions about this? I know.
Camp Phillips is us, but Grand Avenue, do you think they meant something?
I think they meant Schofield
Yeah,
Ave.
Schofield Avenue, because it just.
I think they meant
Business Highway 51.
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
So yeah, I just don't want to disregard that it's in Schofield. We got to say that it's Schofield or Business 51. Okay, I agree.
Grand Ave, not Grand, Business 51 is going to be rebuilt though.
Yeah, I bet it won't handle this.
And I will say
Much
too,
different than this.
when I'm doing focus groups, my job is to simply gather information.
Right.
So I don't correct anything. A lot of times I don't know to. Every once in a while, I will take off my facilitator hat and go, okay, wait a minute, just so that you know, and put it, but I've probably done that twice in the last 6 months. I don't do it often. Yes, please.
I guess just out of curiosity, so like Camp Phillips and if that is either Business 51 or Schofield Ave, Camp Phillips has pedestrian walkways almost the whole way north-south through the village of Weston, except for right by the highway.
That's the bridge.
Okay, so I guess if there's further breakdown exactly of, if there was any specifics, that'd be helpful, because.
I will do I will give you guys a more comprehensive report, and there should be a little bit more information in there, and you and I can talk too, and I can go through some of my rough notes.
Okay.
But importantly to that, your question,
Yeah.
if there's more, answers, it's the perception of this answer. So, and honestly, when I go down Camp Phillips, I do it every day, a couple times. I never think that sidewalk is safe. It's so close to very fast traffic. I mean, somebody could bump that curb in a heartbeat. And then when there's snow being shoved over, it's not cleared right away. It's just a lot of fast moving traffic on Camp Phillips, and you're tight.
That's true.
So it's provided, but they may feel the perception isn't safe,
True.
So,
I think at the Ross Avenue, there is misunderstanding with the sidewalk. And we have 8 feet wide bicycle path, it actually is a sidewalk and a bicycle path. And the reason for it is because we couldn't put the sidewalk there. There was a housing built and a bar built on the right of way. If we want to build the sidewalk, we have to knock out those buildings. So, and a lot of people don't know that, and they think that's too wide. Even planning commission at the Marathon County, they were talking about it, and I had to explain to them the same thing, so.
well, originally we had 2 lanes each way,
Right.
and then we made a bike lane out of that, yeah. Yeah.
And I think that you guys are a very educated group around, what goes on with the city because you sit here. And so I think one of the values of getting this is that we're getting people who don't have that in-depth knowledge. But again, to President Maloney's remark, it's perception.
Oh, it's all perception.
Their perception is reality.
They're paying.
Exactly.
And it's just not, you just wonder how do you get that communicated? Okay.
Next slide, please.
Run for office.
Leadership. So one group at length discussed the advantages of having a village administrator, especially in comparison to some neighboring communities. Keeping the village moving forward. Specifically, they were talking about the fact that the Wausau mayor learns how to do the job and then is voted out. And they saw that consistency of a professional administrator as being an advantage that Weston has. There are some concerns that boards and committees are overstepping bounds and that it may be negatively impacting staff. Staff morale as a result, and there was a recommendation of maybe onboarding, establishment of standards, something to be able to navigate that a little bit better, maybe even something like a leadership retreat for the board. Also, one of the things that came out repeatedly in the focus groups is they want more resident involvement. And this is not uncommon, people who come to focus groups, but they leave and they go, this was great. Why don't we do this more? They understand a lot more than they did when they come in, and they feel like they have an opportunity to give their opinions. And these groups very much felt that way as well. They were very positive about the strategic planning process. What did want to go, and I know this was a comment actually earlier, they wanted to make sure the priorities were universal enough and were enough of an agreement to last through several election cycles. That was one of the concerns. They were very appreciative, though, of having the focus groups and having the opportunity to really have these conversations.
Well, that also is a worry of staff. That, can it go through elections?
Yeah,
It would worry the heck out of me, Nate.
So I've seen more and more municipalities consider more citizen participatory budgeting programs. Other than that, what are some ways to bring the public more into the governance process?
Sure, I have seen things like a citizens advisory committee, if there are some particular things that are being evaluated. One of the things that came up is one of the groups actually kind of landed on this idea of a brand ambassador, that they wanted to have some people that maybe got to function as kind of an in-between between staff and elected and the residents, but to be able to kind of explain maybe some of the things that were going on, maybe a little bit more in the know, but so they could actually share it with their friends and neighbors. That came up as one of the focus groups that they thought would be very helpful to kind of maybe bridge that gap you've got friends who are, you've got people who are, at the park and whatever, to be able to have some more information, to be able to kind of share some of the intricacies we were kind of talking about before that the residents just may not be aware of.
Lauren?
A bit of history. Lauren White, Village of Weston. Hey, gotta identify myself. Many, many years ago, I don't know if anyone here remembers, we had a Weston Future Academy
Uh-huh.
where groups of people signed up, hey, I want to learn about public works. I want to learn, and they sat and they had several days, a week at a time, where they came in and someone gave a presentation about their particular, and that helped a lot. And that's where we got a lot of our citizen members from towards our committees and commissions.
Yep.
Because it gave them a little more insight as far as what's going on.
Yeah, and actually, I hadn't even thought about that, but a Citizens Academy actually is becoming much more, and exactly the way you just described, going ahead and rotating through public works, things like that. Also, even doing some more, surveys. Again, we got really nice response on this, maybe trying to do surveys periodically. There was just kind of this underlying desire for more opportunities for more involvement. It's kind of that double-edged sword with a community that's very invested, is they care a lot about it, but then they also really want to let you know kind of what they think.
Way behind you.
Well, then we could also expand what we do for our water and sewer building and have more in-depth documents than just the Weston Wire about, how much, water and sewer costs, or how much public safety costs, average response time, things like that, so that we're already doing it, may as well just throw in a couple more things.
Newsletter helped a lot.
How many of those QR things were sent out? So those were just blanket
Every postal patron in the village.
in the village, okay?
And there was a second mailing on the,
Actually, twice.
second mailing on the community survey.
Yeah, I know it was on the website as well. So,
On Facebook.
next slide.
Yeah, I put it out on Facebook.
Yeah, it showed up on
Yeah.
Facebook.
Oh,
too.
yes.
That's what I saw, yeah.
Yep.
Or somebody told me it was on there, I don't have Facebook.
Communication transparency, and I have a feeling this is not going to come as a big surprise, but feedback was that communication from the village, from both staff and electeds, that was flagged as a major concern by, I think, actually all of the groups. The small staff was acknowledged as a challenge for communications. They do understand that there's only so many people, they can only do so much. However, they do want to have some sort of solution found. A lot of that came up around the new village hall. Focus groups, again, were appreciated as a way to give feedback. Some of the questions that came up around Village Hall, and I listed out some of them here, was it needed? How was it paid for? Were taxes going to go up? It looks too big, especially if fire and police are going to be housed there. And I specifically had one group who said it really impacted the trust that they had in the village.
Big time.
Because they did not feel like they understood what was going on with that process. And also one group was talking about the Weston Avenue expansion as an opportunity for better communication. Residents want to understand what's going on and they just don't. Any questions about this one?
No?
All right,
That's right in our face, yep.
keep on going. That next one, please. So like I said, normally growth is actually just one slide for me. This time it was two. There was a lot of conversations about growth. High density housing is a concern. On the one hand, I heard we want affordable housing. On the other hand, they heard not really so sure about high density housing. There was talk about the fact that diversity has increased with the growth of the community, and that does need to be accommodated.
High density means,
Apartments.
yeah.
Oh, yes.
12.
Multifamily.
Multifamily, yeah.
Multifamily, okay.
Yes, yeah.
I thought so, okay.
They are also, one of the things that came up was they really want to draw in those well-educated young people. They send them off to college and they want to come back. And that they want to have not only those young people here, but also bringing in people who can create the good jobs that are going to bring them in. Continued growth, however, is needed to keep taxes low, and they understand that growth is apparently Marathon County said that Weston is going to be growing the most. That came up in a couple of different focus groups. They do understand growth is happening. It's just kind of how it's going to happen. People who grow up in Weston leave and then come back. And I heard that in several of the focus groups because they think there's something better out there, and then they realize that everything they want really is actually here. housing needed for seniors, like an active retirement community, and that they actually need homes for sale and not just rentals. And then affordable housing was discussed again by two groups as a need, not only in Weston, but throughout the area, that people are feeling like they're being priced out for a lot of families. Any questions about this?
Stuff we know.
All right, keep on going. Business. Again, we kind of had a little bit of a difference of
What was the
opinion.
other one titled? Because I just noticed.
Residential.
Oh, residential was
All right,
it,
good.
yeah, residential, they're not
I
like
don't know, I
business.
didn't see that, okay.
That's okay.
Business, business.
So zoning is viewed as more restrictive than in other communities. And the perception is that it's harder to build here. They want to be attractive for business because they recognize that tax base offsets resident property taxes. And they also want local businesses. They don't necessarily want the big corporate. They really want the locally owned. They're going to invest and support the community. There apparently was an industrial park where there was not a lot that was sold. There's some concerns about that and how some more of that industrial land can be sold. And it was kind of interesting. Normally I go to places, everybody's like, yes, we want a downtown. That's what we want. And here it was kind of like, you know what? Do we need it? We're not really sure. As long as we kind of have the amenities that we want, it might contribute to a community identity. But there was not the conversation about a downtown that quite honestly I have in every other community I've talked to in the last 6 months. So it was not as much, it's not that it didn't come up with some people, but it was not that's a major topic of conversation with lots of focus groups I do.
But most of those haven't established downtown.
No, actually, no.
Oh.
No, actually, there's a couple of communities I've done in the last 6 months that do not have established, actually, I think of 3 that do not have established downtowns. That was part of the reason for the conversation.
And they want it.
And they wanted one.
Really?
Or people who have one want it to be bigger, better, more locally owned businesses, stuff like that. Again, there's some people who are like, yeah, you know what, we would like one, but other people are like, not really sure. We really kind of have everything that we need. I'm not sure it's all that important to us. But they did say though, again, it could contribute to a community identity. Business needs to be creative to support business growth. That came in a couple of different ways in a couple of different groups. They feel like sometimes the zoning laws can just be very cut and dried, very black and white. Nope, you can't do this. And they really want to see a little bit more creativity. Is there a way maybe to work around it? Is there something that can be done so that some of those good ideas can be accommodated? Permitting process was described as difficult by some participants. And the participants said they wanted to balance keeping the village looking good and being receptive to new growth. Don't want to be constantly under construction, but at the same time, though, they want that new growth coming in. Any questions about that? All right. I told you that the last thing that I did was I asked them for their 3 priorities. I make everybody answer this question. Sometimes what I tell people is, ideally I want 3, I will take 2, I won't take 4. So that's kind of where we're at. I have not had to do this before, and you'll kind of see. Smart growth or some sort of variation of growth, those are actually all individual things that people came up with. This is extremely high. I don't know that I've ever seen growth as high as this. When the number that is accurate, that is how many people said that. With the smart growth of 6, that's only people who said smart growth. But I kind of lumped everything together. I thought that getting that a little bit more detail was going to be important. But environmentally safe growth, targeted zoning for desired businesses, that came up with 5 people. And they weren't all in the same group. More restaurants and or retail, again, came up in a couple of groups. Good jobs, becoming more business friendly. Public safety was 7. To be honest, that's no surprise. That's always way up there because again, if you feel safe, that's where you want to live. Bike and walk friendly, especially near busy streets, a little higher than I normally see. Parks and recreational activities, you guys are right there with Minnesota. Everybody in Wisconsin and Minnesota really likes doing things outside and you guys are pretty consistent.
So is some of this more of or maintaining? Or both?
Or both.
Okay.
Or both, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Next slide, please. Village communication and transparency. And again, they only got 3 and this came through as 1. Now with this, the bullet points that are underneath it, those are not individual. That was part of the 6. But again, I thought that a little bit more information was helpful. Education, again, comes up all the time. Updated infrastructure came up as a concern for 4 people. Public transportation, kind of getting back to that thing before with especially older adults. Streets and better traffic flow. Next slide. Environmental sustainability, sustainable infrastructure, I kind of put those together, better code enforcement, lower taxes, and then the rest of them only had one response. Rural internet, consolidation of services with other communities, better orientation for the village board, long-term planning, and good family environment. The reason why I do this is because we literally at that point have had usually 60 to 75 minutes of conversation, and you make them bring it down to 3. What's really important about what we talked about?
How did these people get in? Did first come, first serve until they were full, or what? You picked them?
They were just
Staff picked
given,
them?
they were given a link to
Yep.
sign up.
Oh, so they signed up with you?
No, they signed up through the village.
Okay. Right. First come, first serve? How? No idea.
Whoever wanted to.
Took as many, we indicated that there were
So we didn't turn anybody away?
up to 18.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, nobody got turned away. And we were hoping there would be more signups. actually.
Yeah, okay. Better orientation?
Next slide.
Oh, this is a new slide, okay.
Yep, I believe that's it. Yep, that is it. So any questions about the focus groups? Any questions about comparatively where you guys are with other communities? I kind of tried to give a little bit of context, but I'm happy to give more if helpful.
I'm not concerned about other communities. I mean, I am that, like our neighborhood here, so like not having a downtown, but yet we can go out to Red Mountain. I think the competition's gotta kind of stop, big time, because there's not enough money. But I'm fine. I sometimes when we compare to other communities, I just kind of go, but does that make it right or wrong for us? I don't know, so.
I think there's,
Yeah,
The Schoolfield Avenue, we can do a little bit better to improve it.
yeah,
Yes, we don't want to compete with the other community, but at the same time, for an emergency or the things I need, I don't want to drive 5-10 miles to get to the mountain and come back home. If I can go to Target, pick it up,
Yeah.
or next door store to it. So
well, okay, so I don't know if the rest of you heard this, but Chick-fil-A is, entertaining to go to Red Mountain. So I got several calls, people I know, what the hell, how did we not get that? And I'm going, 8 goddamn minutes to get to Red Mountain to get my Chick-fil-A versus Appleton, I'll take that all day long. If we get it, we get it. I mean, it ain't done yet, but,
Can't have everything.
I don't know. Sometimes I let them have all that.
You're Red Lobster all the time.
Right, I'll do the Time and Cellar and the cafes outside and that kind of stuff, so.
Yeah, it's the Olive Garden and Trader Joe's of the world. That's, there's just certain things that everybody just kind of wants. And yes, Chick-fil-A is the new one.
You're right, though, Schofield Avenue, even the one side for the sidewalk too.
well, I thought about that too.
Yeah.
We need sidewalk both sides of them. And also, we can improve our appearance of the stores and the.
Yeah, it's amazing, I mean, so what, 120 people maybe at these C3 things? 15, what'd you say, 15,800 people? I used to run a grocery store, if I had 5 comments from 20,000 customers a week on the same item, that was monstrous. I mean, we would change the course of the next week if 5 people said something about one thing. And it's the same thing here, 120, 150 people. It's a collective group that's kind of all commenting on the same stuff. Some of it's kind of out here and out here, but.
Yeah, actually, I just want to clear up real quick, 120 to 150, we had 4 focus groups, and so there's probably 40 people total. 30
Oh, total?
40
Okay,
people.
well,
Yeah,
even then.
I just wanted to make sure that we
I know.
were clear on the numbers. But the thing that with the focus group is, you've got people who put aside other plans, other things they could have been doing.
Highly motivated.
Yeah.
Very invested.
Exactly. But I also will tell you that I do a lot of focus groups. I've probably done 100 in the last 6 months. You've got a lot of people here who are very invested in their community. They really like the community. There are some things that they're concerned about. But I get into some where like, this place stinks and nobody wants to live here anymore, because I didn't hear that here.
Well, we had an issue with Schofield Avenue and we were gonna change it because our neighbor is Schofield. So we were thinking that we should change it, and we decided DCFS, Boulevard. I was beyond pumped that we were gonna do this. I mean, the school said, yeah, I think it's a good idea. We all thought it was a great idea. And then when it kind of got out and the business community said, I gotta change my address, I gotta do this, boom, 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 boom. I mean, it was like, oh my God, it was feverish. I mean, we actually had a full court. I mean, this whole thing would have been full.
That came up in one of the focus groups, actually. I did hear about that.
But the thing is though, I gotta tell you, for me personally, I called as many as I could that I got to know or that called and, really told me off. And several of them said, I can't believe you're calling me. I said, I'm just thanking you for getting involved, And some I still talk to. I thought it was actually pretty healthy, so.
And I will say that, so I love focus groups and these were no different and that the three we had in person, by the time that we got done with the conversations, people were leaving, they were chit-chatting outside, like we couldn't push them out the door. They enjoyed the opportunity to really dialogue with others about what's going on in the village. This is their home.
Yep.
It's important.
The online one, was it some of the repeat or a whole nother set?
Oh, no, it was completely, no, there were no duplications in terms of people. That was an interesting one. There was, that was a wide variety, of people, in that one.
Okay.
Any questions about any of the data I presented or how anything works together, whatever? Again, I like doing both these pieces of data because you get all these numbers and then you kind of find out a little bit more about what's going on behind the numbers. And that was very much, I think it meshed very nicely here. I did not leave with any huge questions.
No, I had tons of questions. I mean, if you all saw this for the first time, are you just kind of digesting it or did you kind of think that's what it was or?
I think it's great information.
Yeah.
I was just
I do
wondering
too.
how we pick and choose and, what to focus on and how we move forward from here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but that's
I'm
our.
ready to jump into next steps.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so.
Yeah.
So basically what we have done tonight is that we've gotten a whole bunch of information, right? I gave you some information from the residents. Keith gave you some information about some infrastructure, some of the financial stuff, some of the things like that. Everybody is doing the SWOT, has done the SWOT presentation.
Well, with respect to the stuff that I did not cover,
Yeah.
that would be some of the bullet points that probably came up in the focus groups in the survey.
Okay.
So if you look ahead at those, I think you're gonna see maybe some similarities. I
Email
hope.
this to us too?
Pardon?
Did you email this to us?
What?
Did you email?
Did I email it?
Your PowerPoint.
I didn't email it yet to
Yeah,
anyone.
well, yeah, I would like to email. I mean, I can't read a lot of it, so
Yeah.
I need to digest
I
it and go
just-
through it, yeah.
Thinking you might be taking notes tonight or something, but I'm more than happy to send it on. Yeah, that's fine. I will.
Good.
And I will take my presentation and I will put that into a PDF so that can be distributed to you
Oh, neat.
all as well, so you have a chance to digest it. So back to your question, then. So now we've got a whole bunch of information in. We are then going to take the SWOT presentations and when we sit down to do the retreat, we're going to kind of look at all of the information that we've got to start discussing what do we need to prioritize.
Who did the SWOT, elected?
Both elected and staff, and I will be.
No committees, commissions, right?
No,
Okay.
and actually I did that. It was completely anonymous because I did it. So it was just electeds and staff. And I will be dividing up the responses between staff and electeds because sometimes there's some different perspectives and so you want to know who said what.
So how effective, I mean, what percentage? Did the whole board?
I got all but one person who did it.
Staff?
Out of everybody who was invited, all but one person did it.
Okay.
So.
You pretty proud of yourself, Michael?
Yeah.
You didn't do it? No, I'm just teasing. It was the first person I looked at. I just grabbed Michael, sorry.
So
Yeah.
are you going to talk about our vision statement and mission statement? I've been involved in some of these
Sure.
planning and with the other organization. But usually what they did, the first thing they did, the vision statement and mission statement, then they built everything on that.
So we will discuss mission, vision, and values. I will say one of the things I don't do is wordsmith it during the retreat because I've literally sat there for 2 days wordsmithing stuff. Nobody wants to do it.
I've walked out. I can't take it. And to be honest, I would rather have all that done in 3 or 4 years. Once we've actually accomplished and we actually are doing, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver.
Sure.
I would much rather underpromise and overdeliver.
So to kind of give you a preview of coming
Sounds like
events.
a good mission statement.
Preview of coming events is that we will, we'll go ahead, we'll discuss it. We'll discuss whether or not you guys think it still fits or if some changes need to be made. If some changes need to be made, I will give you some other examples to kind of look at. And then I will take all of the information I'm given. I'll give you guys some ideas. I will send it back to you later. So it's important to have that conversation, but it's also important not to wordsmith just because of the time that it takes on the spot. So then we will go ahead that day. We will figure out some strategic priorities. We'll be taking those. That's why that SWOT analysis is so important. That's the data that we are drawing from, is to make sure, because it's anonymous, everybody had an opportunity to share, what they thought. We're going to be able to look at all of that data, digest it, and figure out some priorities. Again, the resident stuff, this is important too. These are important stakeholders. We'll be able to bring that in as well. We will then work through the process. We're going to do those in some cross-functional groups. So we're going to put electeds together with some staff when we figure out the priorities to start kind of figuring out what it is that what are the outcomes that we want? What do we want this to look like? And we will work through that for the rest of that day. Talk a little bit about organizational culture as well. Most people, I'm not going to tell you that it's not some hard work because anybody who's done strategic planning, there's times you're like, oh, but I try to make it fun. So that's pretty much what we're going to do on the 29th.
So 29th is our first next.
And hopefully everybody's out of the
It's like
tournament.
4 or 6 hours or something?
So what?
9 to 5.
Okay.
9 to 5? Awesome.
What time do you want to start it?
Are we gonna be locked in a room?
Pretty much.
Padlock on the door.
What time,
Bring your kids?
what time would you like to
Oh,
start?
it's 8 to 5, not 9.
On the 29th?
Yes, what time would you
Actually,
like
okay
to
with
start?
Are we whistling at us?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
What time would you like to start? I put down potentially I guess preliminary 9 to
Are you here
5.
physically?
I don't know what time
Okay.
it's gonna take.
So you tell us the time.
I love 9.
Okay.
I'm good with 9. 9 to 5, is it a Saturday, I hope, or Sunday or something?
No, it's Tuesday.
Oh,
Tuesday.
excellent. That's good.
Even better.
Well,
I just love the potential of being fired. So, yeah.
so
So, yeah. We don't, if we can't make it, we can't make it.
I can't make it.
what do we want to do for lunch that day?
I can take,
Order something.
who are we talking about? This group right here?
This group,
And a few more or not?
no, unless,
I can handle lunch, but if somebody wants like pizza or Chinese, we can do something different, so.
Normally what people do is that they'll do some sort of a box lunch or something like that, and they'll send out something in advance. That's pretty
We've
common.
got some new keto sandwiches that are like 7 grams with the bread. I'm not kidding, the full sandwich. So I ate like 7 of them, but I'm just teasing. Yeah, but I mean, and salads and stuff. I can easily handle lunch, but if somebody wants something, pizza or pasta, or I can't do that, so. But we can do, I have air.
we won't turn down lunch after my attempt to discuss our budget woes, so.
You did awesome. Anyway,
Thank you, Keith.
I can always handle you for 5 minutes. Okay,
Oh,
All
okay,
right,
sorry.
then with that, then if there are no more questions,
so the 29th,
I
right?
am done, yes.
Tuesday, okay. I can handle
Do
it.
we have hours yet?
9 o'clock to whenever, 5, 6, 7.
So I would like to be prepared to stay at 5, but with every intention of trying to cut that, to end early if we can.
Yeah.
I certainly want to have the time available, but I also don't believe in belaboring anything.
Where are we gonna do this?
Believe here, yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay. In this kind of setting with these tables and stuff? Yeah, just wondering.
Is there a different?
There is, so I'm actually gonna want the tables set up so that we can do small group work.
Okay, yep.
So, and again, part of what's important in this is getting cross-functional teams between staff and elected officials, because everybody's bringing different stuff to the table and both perspectives are important.
So by then we could have the tables brought over from the other place.
Well, I mean, just those fold-up ones that we use all the time. If you put two sets together, tablecloths on. I mean, I just think we should be a little closer, right?
Yeah, and I certainly, this is not a good arrangement.
So if we had like two,
All the board tables are coming over.
oh, okay, just, yeah.
Right, just do it at the training room,
Next time.
instead of here.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's less formal.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, and it's, and it feels very formal. We really
does.
want this
It
to
does.
be more of an informal and a chance
I
for
don't
some
wanna-
real conversation.
I don't wanna sit here. The
No.
board should not be sitting like this.
Yes.
Are you gonna need a screen?
What'd you say,
I
ice cream?
do.
What does he want? Ice cream?
No, will we need this?
Baseball, flip, old school stuff.
But if he's offering,
What, ice cream? Oh, absolutely. There'll be ice cream.
I heard screen and we somehow got to ice cream.
I heard
how we
screen
got
too, and I
there, but
thought,
love that.
you just asked for ice cream? You gotta be kidding me.
So with that, if there are no more questions, all right, thank
You want me-
you
you want
very
me to
much
finish my
for.
presentation?
What?
You want me to finish my presentation?
Oh, God, by all means. Yeah. Can I just go to the bathroom first?
Take your coat.
So next is 9 to 5, but if earlier, it's earlier.
Sure.
Okay.
Please 9,
Huh?
please 9.
Yeah. And where are you driving from? Where do you live?
I live in Northern Illinois.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mr. President, I
Yep.
move to adjourn.
Motion by Feeny, second by
They've caught up on most.
Zagami. Any more in discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. We are out at 7:57. Hey, Jen, you have that recognition statement from Little Troop.
On my phone somewhere.
Yeah, I do too. So if I find it, I'm gonna send it to you, but that's
Okay.
still one of my favorites.